heading south of the Mason-Dixon. This is the Week in Review at the Abbeville Institute. Here is your host, Brian McClanahan.
Welcome back to the Week in Review at the Abbeville Institute. This is your host, Brian McClanahan, and this is episode 220, covering the week of June 15th through June 19th, 2020. Glad to have you back on the program. Very glad to be here. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Abbeville Institute, like our Facebook page at Abbeville Institute, and subscribe to our YouTube page at Abbeville Institute. You can find all those social media accounts at our webpage, abbevilleinstitute.org. That's ABBEVILLE, institute.org. While you're there, give us an email address. We'll give you a free ebook, Exploring the Southern Tradition. It is a fantastic book. You're going to want to get it, and it's free of charge. All you got to do is give us an email address. You'll get our daily dose of Dixie Money through Friday and our weekly email on Saturday or Sunday. Can't always guarantee it'll come on one of those days or that you'll get we do run into hitches here and there, but we do try to get this stuff out on a timely manner. Also, remember, we exist on your generous contributions alone, so if you like what we do, if you like the podcast, our website, our conferences, all those things, and we've got other things we're trying to work on. We don't have a big staff. That's what some people, when they contact us, they think they want to come to the Institute or they want to meet. There's very few of us that work behind the scenes and doing all this stuff. So it's a lot of work. We do try our best, but funding is always an issue for us. And so if you like what we do, you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Abbeville Institute. It is tax-deductible to the full extent of the law. We would love a monthly donation, an annual donation, and it can be as small as you want to make it. I mean, we love your support, whether it's $1 a month or $5 a month or $5,000. Whatever you want to contribute, we appreciate every dime you give the Institute because it all goes to a good cause. We do try our best to keep producing high-quality material for you in these very crazy times. So please consider a tax-deductible donation. Also, if you like our material, share it around on Facebook, like it on Twitter, whatever you want to do, or please consider sharing the material around. Rate our podcast on wherever you get your podcast. Download our free mobile application. Get it there. There's all kinds of ways to keep in touch with the Institute. Get your Abbeville Institute apparel at abbevilleinstitute.org. Click on that support tab and shop. You get that high-quality embroidered material on your shirt or your hat or your golf towel or your fleece jacket, whatever you want. And that, of course, gets people interested. Hey, what's that? So we've got all kinds of ways to support what we do and, of course, advertise that you are a fan of the Institute. And again, in these times, it's becoming harder and harder to even make sense of things. And so I actually want to start this week with a piece, with the Friday piece by Barbara Marthel. Now, somebody sent me on my own personal account a tweet, and he linked an article that we wrote 2 years ago, published on our website on Juneteenth. And the author called it a celebration of nothing. And I remember when that article was posted, a lot of people got very upset. Oh, you can't say that. All the author was saying is that, look, June 19th isn't Emancipation Day. That would be the day that the 13th Amendment was officially ratified because there were still states that had slavery up until that point. And even in Louisiana, when the Emancipation Proclamation was issued, it didn't free any slaves in Union-occupied territory. And there is actually, the image we use on the post shows this conclusively, that slaves were still required to work on the plantations. If they ran away, they would be made as slaves in the Union Army. If they went back, they would be unmolested. So you have this history that's distorted. Just today I saw a Twitter account from an African American, and he basically brought up the same thing. And of course, he's hailed as a hero, but if you bring up anything we write on the Institute, well, that's racist because the SPLC said something negative about Don Livingston or something, and so it's just neo-Confederate propaganda. But when this other guy says it, it's okay. You see, what most people don't realize about the Institute, and this is why I'm bringing up this Friday piece, it's by Barbara Marthel. If you don't know who Barbara Marthel is, you can go out and you can find her on our YouTube page. She's given us several lectures at our summer schools and conferences. She's an African-American woman. She's a Muslim African-American woman who is from the South. She loves the South. She loves Nathan Bedford Forrest. She loves Robert E. Lee. She loves singing Dixie. She loves the Southern people. She considers herself a Southerner first and foremost. That's all that matters. And a lot of people don't realize we have a fairly diverse group of people that write for the Institute. Barbara Marthel included in that. We've had several African Americans present at conferences. We have individuals who have written for us that have African American wives or Hispanic American wives. We've written stories laudatory of Jimmy Carter. Ben Jones, who is a big supporter of what we do, he's presented at our conferences, attended our conferences. Ben Jones was considered a liberal when he was in Congress. We have people across, we have Asian Americans who write for us. We have people across the political spectrum, across the racial spectrum, who support the Abbeville Institute, who write for the Abbeville Institute. And yet, groups like the SPLC and others are continuing to spread their idiotic propaganda about us at times, or people will cite it. Of course, the SPLC has never said it can't because it would be slanderous. But we have people that regurgitate nonsense from the SPLC or other people. This is just neo-Confederate propaganda. You see, the people that write for us love the South and they love the Southern tradition. They find value in it, no matter who they are or what their background is, because the Southern tradition is timeless, number one. It is a beautiful representation of Western civilization, the best parts of Western civilization. Now, we all know that all traditions have negative things, even despicable things, and the South has those things as well. But the beautiful parts of the Southern tradition and the Southern people are things that people across time in the United States have recognized. This is why when we did our conference several years ago on Southern music, and I presented a piece entitled, "That's What I Like About the South," I brought up how in the early 20th century, black musicians, Jewish producers, and others were writing songs that were laudatory of the South because they knew that those were the things. I mean, who wants to be in New York in the wintertime when it's snowing when you can be in the South around nice people and good food and great music, great hospitality? That's what I like about the South. Let's go down to Alabama. Let's go see my dear old mammy. She's frying eggs and cooking hammy. That's what I like about the South. I mean, that was written by, I believe that those lyrics were written by an African American. Off the top of my head, I can't remember 100%. But I know that the man who famously sang it, was from Tennessee, ultimately. But when you look at the early 20th century and how people thought about the South, it was hospitality. It was Louis Armstrong when it's sleepy time down south. I mean, this was his home, and he wanted to go back there. And so when we look at Barbara Marthel's piece, and the title is Calming the Rage, she begins by telling a little story about herself. She's a great storyteller. She tells a little story about herself. And she says, look, I was brought up in a Christian household. I'm a Muslim, and people question, why would you even tell people that? She says, because people are tolerant in the South, whether you believe it or not. But she still remembers all of her Christian hymns, and she cites several biblical verses about forgiveness and peace. And she says, look, the officer that has been accused of killing George Floyd is Christ died for him as he did for George Floyd. And we need to remember this is peace and reconciliation. You see, what's really under attack in the United States today is reconciliation. There was a terrible, almost 3 days in a row, there's been a terrible piece written in the National Review. 2 by an Irish Brit, young Irish Brit who's sent, we need to take down Confederate monuments and statues and symbols and everything else. He brings up in one piece about reconciliation, but then, says that was a relic of the time. We need to get beyond that now. We don't need these things anymore. But you see, we still need reconciliation. Because attacking these things is going after the very heart of what that reconciliationist movement was all about. It was about forgiveness and healing after 4 years of horrible, horrible war. And the people that are living in the United States today, we're only 150 years removed from that or so. I mean, a little over that now. But that's not that long ago, and we're still living in the byproduct of that, which of course is nationalization. Homogenous, nationalized, one-size-fits-all cultural Marxist nonsense. But Barbara is talking about healing and reconciliation, and she gave this address, and she praised Nathan Bedford Forrest. Now, people would look at this and say, "Oh, how can you do that, Barbara?" She says, because look, this is a speech he made to an African-American group after the war. And it was about reconciliation. And people would say Forrest is being just disingenuous here. He's lying. But she says, I can love Nathan Bedford Forrest as I can love the South, and I can love people even if I don't agree with them, because that's really what the heart of her piece is about, is a Southern tradition. And the fact is, that part of it, that healing, that reconciliation, we need that. We need that. Because we're facing attacks from people that should be our allies. I mean, look, the American right should be defending Confederate statues and monuments and symbols, because they are a symbol of self-determination, of limited government. These are a symbol of these things. Southerners across the political spectrum, across the racial divide, should be supporting Confederate symbols. They're a symbol of the South. And this is actually brought up. Somebody brought up, the Democrats did a kneel-in. Pelosi and others went and they put on the kente cloth and kneeled down for 8 minutes and 49 seconds in the Congress. They had their kente cloth on. And somebody brought up, wait a second here, the kente cloth was used by the Ashanti. It's a pro-slavery cloth, and yet you're sitting here denouncing slavery. And the USA Today actually ran a piece on this, and they said, well, this is true. The kente cloth was used it is attached to slavery. They found in their research this is the case, but that symbol is then used by modern African Americans as a symbol of pride and of place and West African heritage. Well, can't the same thing be said of the Confederate flag? Can't the same thing be said of the U.S. flag? That flag flew over slavery for 80 years. Can't the same thing be said of that? But no, it means something else to other people. The Klan has used the Confederate flag. The Klan has used the U.S. flag. Used the U.S. flag more than the Confederate flag. This is true. But to most people that fly that flag, it's a symbol of Southern pride and heritage. It's a symbol of the South. To most people that fly that flag. So, cannot the same argument be used for Confederate symbols? They're a symbol of the South. Whether you're on the left, on the right, you're black, white, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. It's a symbol of the South, of a region. And this is what people miss. And Barbara is a nice representation of that. She loves the South. She loves the people of the South. She loves the place. She loves the Southern tradition. And she's very critical of it at times. But she still loves it. And that's what you get from the Abbeville Institute. It's about loving the people, the place, the culture, the community, the environment, the traditions, the literature, the music, and understanding not every tradition, understanding every tradition has warts that you want to say, that's terrible that happened. But we're beyond that. And let's talk about the beautiful part of that tradition. We could say this about any civilization, Western civilization in general. You could say it about Chinese civilization, say it about Japanese civilization. You could say about any civilization. It's going to have its warts. It also has the things you can say, wow, that's really beautiful. And the Southern tradition is no different. But yet you have a constant assault from the top down on the Southern tradition as the insignificant, or I should say rather, the significant problem, the insignificant people. I mean, these are the people that you just don't, it doesn't matter. You can abuse them, you can beat them down, but they're always the problem. Now, I go back to the interview that we had, again, part 3 of the interview with Clyde Wilson that we ran this week. And he brings this up and he says, look, these Northerners don't really believe it because they're moving to the South in great numbers because this is what they really want. They want the slow pace. They want the better weather. They want the better music. They want these things, the better food. They want this stuff. And when they get down here, they change everything. We know that African Americans are moving to the South in large numbers because this is better than Detroit or Chicago. White and black Southerners get along very well, in fact, but it's not often portrayed that way. And in my own podcast, I talked about an article written in 2018 on the Tuskegee Confederate Monument, which is on private land. And they interviewed a guy who had a business. He's a black man, had a computer repair shop around the corner from the monument. He could see it. They said, does that monument offend you? He said, nah, it doesn't offend me. It's been out there forever. I don't care. And this is what most people have thought for years. These are what most rational, sane people have said about Confederate monuments in the South. When you look at who's instigating the problems, they're typically outsiders who have come in. They might live in Virginia now, but they aren't from Virginia. Or they might live in Georgia now, but they're not from Georgia or North Carolina. They've moved in from somewhere else, and now they're stirring the pot. Because the people that were from there didn't care. Unfortunately, in so many places, these people that are not from there are outnumbering the people that are from there. And so they're able to push an agenda. This is what John Shelton Reed talked about when we did publish a piece, an interview with him by Alan Mendenhall a few weeks back. North Carolina, he's saying, look, I don't even recognize North Carolina anymore. It's not the South. So we've got pockets of the South that are still the South. Then we have places that aren't. But I wanted to emphasize this with Barbara Marthel because it's important to recognize the South is a diverse tradition. But people have loved it across that diversity of the South. And it's a marvelous thing. And of course, Clyde hits the nail on the head when he says, this is the best. He's asked, what are the best books on the South? Lee in the Mountains by Davidson. He says it's wonderful. He also mentions the Kennedy brothers, The South is Right, and Punished with Poverty. He said, look, if people read Punished with Poverty, there would be a revolution in the United States, black and white, against the Yankee imperialist order. He also brings up William Faulkner, The Unvanquished. And it's just a fantastic interview, and we'll run the last part of it. And of course, we've been running Clyde's series on poetry. We took a break from that because there's so many things going on now. People ask us to respond to some of these things, so we put off we haven't run the series on music in a couple of weeks. That's coming back. We will get these things back up and running again. But we have so many other things, and of course, one of the other big news items was the attack on Calhoun at Clemson University, of all places in the United States, to attack John C. Calhoun on his plantation, on his land. And so we had two pieces, one by Bill Watkins, who is a great scholar, legal scholar, and the other by Andrew Calhoun, who was a direct descendant of the family. Calhoun has been was for years, he's now off the board, but on the Historic Preservation Board at Clemson University. And he brings up look, what are we trying to preserve if we take away Calhoun? This was his college. In fact, Clemson himself thought that Calhoun's name should be on it. If you go to Clemson University, you go to the center part of the campus, you're going to Fort Hill, which was Calhoun's house. It's there. So why should his name not be on the university that's sitting on his land? And of course, even Thomas Clemson has come under attack because he held racial views that are out of step with modern society. So why not just change the entire name of the school? Why call it Clemson? You look at every single university in the South, and they're going to have people involved, particularly the ones that were around before the war, and They're going to be in, and even after the war. You look at where I live now, and where I live in the South, in Alabama, you've got Auburn University talking about renaming things or doing things differently. But the man who created Auburn football was ardently pro-South and pro-Confederate. In fact, it was brought up, should we bring up some of these mascots and some other things? When Auburn fan says War Eagle, that has ties to the Confederacy. So should we stop saying that now? I mean, since University of Florida has gotten rid of the gator bait, which was actually created by an African American. But no, that's got racist overtones, so we can't do it. I mean, this is how stupid this stuff is. It's daily we're getting more and more in the stupid files. And universities, as Bo Trawick, was it Bo or Gene Kaiser? I can't remember who wrote this piece last week off the top of my head. It was Gene Kaiser, I'm sorry, not Bo. It was Gene Kaiser. Bo wrote Agents of the World Spirit. Gene Kaiser, who wrote Defend Academia, Not the Police. I mean, he brought up the point. The academy is the real problem here because they're not really teaching anything but platitude and spinelessness and slogans and chants. This is what they're teaching. And this is what passes now for intellectual activity. So when you look at every major institution in the South, research university, they're going to have some tie to a quote-unquote racist past. What about North Carolina? What about Duke? James B. Duke, the Duke family. I mean, there's ties to the Confederacy and the Duke family. And, I mean, look, Duke made all of his money on tobacco. Isn't that just not evil nowadays to be someone who made any money on tobacco? That's just horrible. So should we just take Duke off of that? Florida State has ties to Thomas Jefferson. Should we not just then take away, everything from Florida State has to go? There's ties to Jefferson there. I mean, this is how stupid this stuff is, but this is where we are. So when you look at, Andrew Calhoun's piece or Bill Watkins' piece, and they point out the stupidity and hypocrisy of all of this. It doesn't matter to the left, though. They just don't care. They don't care about being called hypocrites because they think they're doing the right thing for social justice or whatever it is. And they're going to cherry pick. They're going to take things that they know they can get fairly quickly and get done and say they're doing something and don't have to tear down anything else. I mean, because if you go all the way, which is what really the left wants, you're going to have to change everything. And of course, Paul Yarborough brings up the situation in Virginia in his piece, Virginia Liars, Locusts, and Native Sons. Again, about how stupid the situation really is in Virginia. At the end of the day, Virginia doesn't deserve Robert E. Lee. It doesn't deserve George Washington or Thomas Jefferson. Modern Virginia doesn't deserve these men at all. It deserves Ralph Northam. This was said during World War II, when you had the students who were opposing Hitler. You had the Germans who opposed Hitler. And it was said at the time that every people deserves the government it endures. So the people of Virginia the modern people of Virginia deserve the government they endure. Every people deserves the government it endures. Now, I know this can be used to say, well, people endure horrible, we have all these people. We don't endure the Trump administration, whatever it is. I mean, look. But the people of Virginia, the people that elected Ralph Northam, and of course the people that are now taking down the statues in Virginia, these are people there deserve that government. Now, not the good people because they actively fight against it, but the people that get it and then, of course, eventually are going to complain about it when it goes further. And I mentioned at the Abbeville Institute, in a piece I wrote after the Democrats took control of the Virginia legislature, I said, watch, one of the first things they're going to do is get rid of Confederate monuments. And I was correct. Because you see, that's the easy thing. Because that's supposed to solve everything. If just those Confederate monuments were down, George Floyd would still be alive, right? If those Confederate monuments in Richmond, Virginia were not there, George Floyd would still be breathing today, because it's only because of these Confederate monuments that George Floyd is dead. This is how stupid the arguments are against these things. But this is essentially what's being said. It's essentially what's being argued across American society, that these monuments are the reason why people are facing all kinds of racial abuse or physical abuse, whatever it is. It's because of these monuments, because of these symbols. These things have nothing to do with it. And I think Barbara Marthel points that out very well. We've lost Christian charity. We've lost the things that made reconciliation possible. Now, we all know that, again, in that time, there were still bad things going on between races of people, not just in the South, but in the North. One of the things that's been brought up recently is the Tulsa riot. Tulsa in Oklahoma. But, that's just one example. There are all kinds of examples of terrible, terrible racial violence in northern cities, in northern communities in the 20th century. In fact, there's a very famous picture of a lynching, and it's often cited, here we go, these evil Southerners lynching somebody. It was taken in Indiana. It's a horrible picture. Taken in Indiana, though. I thought Indiana was in the North. And of course, who can forget the picture from the 1970s in Boston of the African-American protester getting beat with a U.S. flag? I mean, these are good, kindly people up there. Why was there a protest? Because that African-American was protesting the racism of Boston and the forced busing that was going to take place. But I thought these things didn't happen in the North, in the noble North. You see, the claims of the African-American community of racism across the United States is true. What is misguided, though, is when all the attention gets focused back on the South because, well, it can. You see, when George Washington is toppled in Seattle or Portland or wherever he's taken down, or in Berkeley, California, wherever it is, and people talk about Seattle, people don't realize that Chief Seattle, what Seattle is named after in Washington, was a genocidal slave owner. As a war chief, he wiped out another tribe. Completely gone off the face of the map. That's genocide. And he owned slaves. And yet, he is the noble vision of the people of the Northwest. But yet George Washington, who was magnanimous, a symbol of what made America great, who happened to be a slave owner, you can't have him anymore. But we can have Chief Seattle. Where does the stupidity and hypocrisy stop? I don't know. This is why Christian humility and charity and why reconciliation is so important. Because you see, at the time it was thought, okay, Southerners will recognize Abraham Lincoln as a good thing, slavery was bad. And Southerners said, fine, we recognize slavery was bad. Slavery was not a good institution. It brought out petty tyrants, the worst in man. But yet, Southern heroes would be recognized as American heroes. Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis. I mean, they were. Look, these men were American heroes before the war, and they were American heroes after the war. We'll recognize these men as great men. Southern soldiers as great men. If anyone should have hated Southern soldiers, it was the Union soldiers, because they were getting shot at by these Southern soldiers, and their friends were getting blown apart by cannon on the battlefield. But they didn't. They didn't hate them. They wanted reconciliation. They wanted to shake hands and say, you know what, Johnny Reb, you did your job, and Billy Yank, you did your job. And we're going to shake hands, and that's going to be that. But we've lost that reconciliation. We've lost the spirit of Booker T. Washington saying, you know what we need to do? We need to create more monuments to the best men of the South, because as he saw it over time, these men are the great allies to both races in the South. And we need to express that. But nope, that's not the case, because to National Review, because to leftist publications, these things have to come down. And they have to come down because they represent traitors in the worst of American society. When in reality, they represent the best part of American political society, which is self-determination. And that's why the Confederate battle flag has been flown all over the world in defiance of tyranny, whether it's by U.S. soldiers or in East Germany or in China or in Africa. It's been flown in defense of tyranny. In opposition of tyranny. In defense of opposition to tyranny. We live in strange times. There's no way to describe it, and it's only going to get worse. But this is why the Abbeville Institute exists. It exists to express the beauty of the Southern tradition, a tradition that is under constant assault now. And who knows where that assault is going to take us. I opine this is the third American Revolution. We're going through it again. This is the continuation. This is Eric Foner's unfinished revolution. It's being finished. And it's going to be nasty. It's going to be nasty for anything traditional in America. So if you like what we do, if you want to try to hang on to that, we'll still be the voice in the darkness. As long as we can, we'll be the voice in the darkness. And we'll continue to do what we do. And hopefully you like what we do and you continue to support us in all the things that we do. Because we have a lot of people that people don't realize who they are supporting what we do and saying, the madness, it's enough. The madness needs to stop. Until next time, good day.